Welcome to Harbinger's flagship interactive webinar, Power Hour.
Ensure you have selected the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker to ensure it is working fine from the audio settings option on the lower left corner of your screen. If necessary, dial in using phone.
Let's tune in.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, and a warm welcome to an extraordinary Power Hour that will redefine the way we approach onboarding and learning. My name is Anushri Sharma, and I'm super thrilled to host this Power Hour on the topic, the role of generative AI in onboarding and learning. Little bit about myself. I have 15 years of experience in IT industry and have a deep passion for exploring innovative solutions that drive organizational growth and nurture talent. Currently, I'm working as Director of Marketing at Harbinger. Once again, I welcome all of you for this insightful discussion. We started the series on generative AI for HR tech with a bang. Our first episode resonated well with the audience, where we discussed the crucial role of generative AI in recruitment. Building upon that momentum, we are excited to present another episode which is enlightening. Today's discussion is going to be very interesting. Our esteemed panelists, experts at the forefront of innovation, will guide us through a thought-provoking discussion, sharing insights and practical strategies that will leave you inspired and ready to take on the challenges of the future. But let's have this engaging conversation. I encourage all of you to actively participate by sharing your thoughts and comments in the chat box. And if you have any questions, you can put it in a QA. If we run out of time and couldn't answer any of the questions, then we will make sure that you get all your responses over the email ASAP. So fasten your seatbelts and let's dive into this captivating topic. Here is our game plan. So today we are going to cover how generative AI transforms and personalizes onboarding and learning experiences, how it helps to cater to individual learning style and preferences. This is very interesting. How generative AI helps upskill employees and foster a culture of continuous learning. What are the key considerations to integrate generative AI into onboarding and learning strategies? And last, but very, very important, how to have responsible and ethical use of generative AI in onboarding and learning. Sounds very, very interesting, right, guys? So I'm super thrilled now to bring our panelists who are best in the industry. We have Tracy Sponberg, Stephen Lytle, and Prashant Khambekar. Starting with Tracy, I will just like to introduce her. Tracy is a global speaker on HR, leadership, technology, and business issues. She is the Chief People Officer of the Granite Group. While Tracy used to describe herself as working in HR, she now describes herself as a business leader specializing in people, a change that came after her transformation from paper first to people first leader. Very interesting. Her HR expertise has been featured on the BBC, NPR, USA Today, US News and World Report, and the Wall Street Journal. Wow, very interesting, Tracy. Welcome, and we are honored to have you.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Next, we have Stephen. Stephen is an innovative HR director with over 15 years of experience. Stephen has a keen understanding of the intersection between technology and HR. He has been recognized as 40 under 40 by Tampa Bay Business Journal and the Excellence in HR Award by the South Florida Business and Wealth magazine. Wow, great. That's very great, Stephen. Welcome. Welcome to our Power Hour.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here this morning.
Now we have Prashant as well. Prashant leads the HR Tech line of business at Harbinger Group. He has 20 years of rich and varied experience in engineering, management, and business development of software products. His deep involvement, innovative solutions, and passion for HR tech business have helped various software and product companies overcome domain-specific challenges. In addition to HR tech, blockchain, IoT, and data engineering are Prashant's areas of interest, where he is known to be leader of new initiative. Welcome, Prashant.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yes. So let me share some statistics with you. According to Glint, new hires who have poor onboarding experiences are 8 times more likely to be disengaged. According to Lorman Education Services, 70% of employees would be somewhat likely to leave the current job to work for an organization known for investing in employee development and learning. According to Paychecks, 80% of new hires plan to quit soon when they feel undertrained from poor onboarding. Based on the statistics, it is very evident that effective onboarding is vital for an organization's success. However, we have seen that there are a lot of challenges when it comes to traditional onboarding and learning. Now I would like to turn to our esteemed panelists to shed light on these obstacles and provide their valuable insights. So Tracy and Stephen, from your wealth of experience, could you please elaborate on some of the key challenges you have observed in traditional onboarding and processes? We can go with Tracy first.
So I've had the, I guess, pleasure or maybe not pleasure of being on both sides of this, right? So gathering experience of my own and being onboarded into new organizations, and also leading solo with the team and leading a team designing these onboarding experiences. And I also have 3 children, 1 fully in the workforce and 2 working part-time while they're in school, and kind of like gather things from their experience and certainly with friends and reading things and whatnot. And so being on the other side of things, being where I design it, I know how difficult this is. I know how challenging this is for organizations to, the key to everything in the world of HR these days is personalization. How challenging it is to personalize that onboarding experience, especially the larger you get. How the challenges come in when you have remote employees, and how do you make them feel like they're part of a team? How do you integrate different learning styles? How do you get the information out to new people without overloading them, showing them what they need to know in the first days, in the first weeks, and onboarding really is up to a year. And how do you kind of feed that out without overloading them and, just sending them into a tailspin of that's way too much too soon. And then you can get into what data do you want to capture? How do you measure that? So it's so critical for every organization, and something we so often miss. And this is something we're really trying to wrap our heads around at the Granite Group, and really trying to continuously iterate on that onboarding experience.
Yeah, I think Tracy speaks some very good experience, right? And it really kind of helps to understand the challenges that we see. I speak from my experiences too, and I would say that I've traditionally worked for some very large enterprise level environments, but within the last 2 years moved to a smaller environment where I could make a bigger impact. And so I think for smaller organizations, they often face challenges like a lack of structure, limited resources, lack of personalized onboarding, and without formalized processes, onboarding really can become inconsistent, right? So one hire can have a fantastic experience because they have a great people leader, but the next hire may not, and they may really struggle in that experience. So I think, that compounded with, those smaller organizations, there's limited resources, meaning HR personnel often have a lot of other tasks to handle, right? It's not just onboarding. They're also doing performance management, talent development, and employee engagement and culture, right? They're not in these HRBP type environments with all this support. And so, I think that makes it a big challenge for smaller organizations. Larger organizations, on the other hand, they face challenges related to scale. They're very complex environments. And oftentimes when you're hiring hundreds and thousands of people a year, it really becomes kind of a logistical nightmare, right? And you really have this disconnected experience. And so I think that the complexity of large organizations makes it harder to present new hires of a picture of the entire organization, to really get them to feel connected. And ultimately, I think ChatGPT and generative AI can both help small and large organizations to overcome these challenges. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think this is a great start. Definitely, you both have put some very great points for both large and mid-sized organization. There are challenges. Then there are huge challenge of lack of personalization. I really there's some very good points. I would like to actually understand from Prashant as well. What do you think, Prashant? What are the key challenges when it comes to learning?
Yes. So quite a few challenges. Some of them, from the onboarding of an employee onto the, their future tenure during the whole organization, in the whole organization. So there is, continuous learning that is desirable. Ultimately, the learning is for, suitability for work. So that your performance and your productivity is good, and the organization benefits from what you have learned and how quickly and well you can do your work. One of the things is, how to have things which are properly structured, like what are the courses or what are the things that you need to learn in order to get to where, is a good point. And it's a moving target. It's not like, this is a set path, and then, once you have it, then everything is good. A person is evolving year after year, and so therefore, the material that they should learn changes. The other challenge is, what is the material and how is it going to be absorbed? Is it interesting enough? If it is not interesting, then the absorption of that material is going to be very difficult. I mean, we all know that, for example, we learned some things in college and we probably have forgotten them. But now if we go to a YouTube video and, that same material is presented in a better manner, then we like it. And we actually say, I wish I learned this when I was in college, or so similar experiences, right? So the interesting aspect is the aspect of maintaining interest, retaining interest is very important. The other challenge is availability of experts. So like Stephen was talking about, it's a logistical nightmare to get both the learner and possibly the experts at the same time. So my son, just as Tracy is in the workforce, my son is now doing an internship, and it is going to take him 1 week to get the attention of somebody who knows a specific tool that they have to use, and my son has to use. But it's going to take a week just so that, because the other gentleman is busy, and he will get time only after a week. The availability of the experts, sometimes it is the availability of equipment that is needed. It could be some kind of lab equipment. It could be tools that are needed, so the availability of the equipment, that can be a challenge. Then certain things which are kind of like what you might say distractors, or hurdles in the learning process itself. If you are coming from a different language background, for example, okay, and you may not be familiar with the terms that are used, so that can be a limitation, or a kind of like a burden during learning. And sometimes definitions also. So different people come from different backgrounds, and the same words and phrases might have different definitions. So that kind of adds some complexity to learning. It's like, what exactly did this person mean? And this comes again to the personalization point that Tracy mentioned, which is that different people are coming from different backgrounds. They have different mindsets, and it's hard for, say, an instructor-led scenario to consider all the different viewpoints that different people come from. And the other challenge is, if you don't practice what you have learned, then you will forget things. So that's another challenge in learning, whether the learning is for the onboarding part or it is subsequent to onboarding.
Wow, wonderful points, Prashant. Whether you practice, whether you do whatever, if you don't practice, nothing will happen. That's absolutely true. Now, I think let's ask from our audience also, what aspect of traditional onboarding do you think needs the most improvement? So I'm starting a poll. You can answer here. You have got options. Let's hear from you guys. Which aspect of traditional onboarding do you think needs the most improvement? Is it paperwork and administrative tasks, orientation and company culture introduction, training and skill development, or personalized onboarding experience? Please participate. We would love to hear from you. Wow, this is great. This is growing. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll in another 2 seconds. Oh, great. Oh. Wow. Absolutely. 54% speaks that personalized onboarding experience is, the main thing which needs improvement in traditional onboarding. Wow, that's great.
I think that makes a lot of sense. We don't know how to do that yet in general, and a lot of companies have already automated paperwork and admin tasks. So I think that's interesting. Surprising yet not surprising.
Yeah. So generative AI has been making waves in various industries. It is definitely a game changer. So, and we have seen in the poll results also that people are looking for, personalization, even though this is the biggest challenge which we have seen in our today's Power Hour poll as well. So I would like to, ask Tracy and Stephen, what do you think, how generative AI can transform and personalize the onboarding experience?
Go ahead, Stephen. You jump into this one first.
Yeah, so, I think that there's a lot of ways that it can do it. I think one of the things I think about, and just obviously compounded by the fact that we just said personalization is most important, right, is, start at the basic level, the leader who's going to welcome this person to the team, right? If a leader is not strong with how to personalize that experience, guess what they can do? They can go ask ChatGPT, what are some of the greatest ways to personalize and strengthen the onboarding experience for employees? And it'll talk to you about, hey, maybe you could send an email saying, hey, I'm welcoming you to the, welcome to the team. I can't wait for you to start. Or maybe it'll say, hey, give them a call 2 days before to make sure that they don't have any questions, right? Or it'll say, hey, make sure you send this email, welcome them to the team and introducing them to everybody in the culture. And guess what? ChatGPT can write those scripts. It can write those emails. I'll tell you, I personally do it myself for the team that I onboard. I always write a welcome to the team. I ask them to share a little bit about themselves, their personality, what makes them who they are. And what do? Here's my template and it pops it out. And everybody's like, man, you are so articulate. You speak so well about people. And I love how you told my story. I haven't yet told them that it's ChatGPT, though I'm sure they'll find out from this, right? But beyond enabling managers, right, beyond making it a personal experience that way, it's also about, really measuring and improving the effectiveness on onboarding, right? So utilizing that kind of technology, we can make sure that we're tracking them along the way. We can use that feedback to continually improve their onboarding process and their learning process to the systems. I think one of the things that I also like in ChatGPT, as you think about onboarding and kind of the learning component of it is you can use it to cater to different kind of learning styles. And that's going to support diversity and inclusion, right? People who come from different backgrounds where maybe they learn differently or they have a different level of education, you can use that to really create a more inclusive onboarding experience. And so, I think it's really about how do you make it about the individual? And that starts with the day that they apply and how easy it is to apply. It starts with their interview, and having those conversations, and continues not only through the onboarding process, but through their employee journey.
Wonderful.
I don't know if I can say it better than that, but I can add a little bit to that. So if you think of ChatGPT as like a little tiny baby, maybe not a tiny baby, but like a 9-month-old baby, and it's learning a little bit more as we go along. And I think we won't know for a while yet the full impact. And I think that we'll get into the ethics and whatnot. And the full impact, I think, is really wonderful and really potentially scary. But even right now, like I asked ChatGPT for specific examples, and it couldn't give examples of companies. And we talked about this in kind of the pre-prep here that are using generative AI in onboarding and learning. The companies are using it. So exactly what Stephen talked about. I think, you know, that personalization, and particularly that personalization for DEI is incredibly important. Doing things like using different languages, you know, you can, that's been something we struggled with. We have a number of people speaking Spanish. So we started training our supervisors to speak Spanish, and we can now use generative AI to translate some things. You know, automating that whole experience, personalizing that whole experience, not just to language, but to where somebody, how they learn, to where the role is geographically, whether they're remote or not, to where the person is in their learning experience. And it can learn about the person and change that. You can add in gamification, you can create quizzes and polls to test knowledge. I think there's really an unlimited way that it can personalize that onboarding experience. And I think one of the things that holds us back the most, particularly those of us in small and mid-sized companies, is understanding how to harness that power and understanding how to use it as a tool, and not, here you go, here's ChatGPT, interact with that only, right? How to use it as a tool, because it has bias and it can lie to people and it can make fun of people, and it can do some really, that's changing a little bit, but it can do some really kind of challenging things. But it's a great tool. It's a really good co-pilot. We'll be talking a lot more about the word co-pilot. Really good co-pilot as you design these things, and a really good augmentation to the human experience of onboarding.
Wow, some great points, Tracy and Stephen. Thank you so much. Okay, now let's move to another thing. As we explore the role of generative AI in onboarding and learning, it is important to consider the diverse learning style and preferences of individuals. Each person has unique ways of acquiring knowledge, and this we have been discussing in the start of the webinar as well, right? We all have diverse ways how we acquire knowledge, how do we engage with the learning material. So Prashant, I would like to ask you, how can generative AI adapt and customize learning experiences to meet the diverse need of learners?
Okay. So yes, the question is very important. Like, you know, the motivation is we want to be more personalized, and the main aspect, there are two aspects. One is the actual material and its learning, and the other is like how to start off, you know. So to start off, basically what ChatGPT can help you with, or ChatGPT is just one example, but there are other generative AI tools, you know, so they can basically understand what are the courses and possible, you know, the need for those courses, and what do they address in terms of, like, you know, what skills are to be acquired and how quickly, and all of that. And so ChatGPT can guide you in the process of, like, okay, which courses do I take? I'm calling them courses, but they can be, like, you know, they can be any learning material. They can be small things, they can be big things. But what learning material do I need to go through in order to you know, get my skills to the to the level where they need to be? So that's one aspect. Then during the actual material and learning about that material. So what generative AI can do is that, given any set of material, whether it be text, whether it be video, that material will be ingested and available with the tool. And then one can, like, question, and, you know, one can find out about the material that is there. So the one thing is that it can be according to the need that I feel as a learner, you know. So if I feel the need at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then I can get my questions answered at that time. And if I happen to be working late at 10 o'clock at night, I can get an answer at that time. And remember, we talked about the fact that experts may not be available, but, you know, the availability of a tool like generative AI is mostly 24/7, assuming that it has ingested the material before, and so one can get the questions answered anytime. So it is basically like learning in the flow of work. It is, this is my work. During my work, I have certain difficulties, and it might be material that I have learned before, and I just need to kind of like get a refresher little thing, or it could be some new material that's a challenge for me. But basically, it can be in the learning in the flow of work. And I talked about the facts that sometimes the definitions or those kind of things can be difficult, and so one can easily ask okay, what did you mean by this, or what's the definition of this, or what's this concept about? And the generative AI can explain that. So it need not be like that. Everybody else in the so-called, say, instructor-led training, is on one page. You're not on the same page, and so your questions are being disrupted. Since this is like personalized to you, you can ask your questions when you want them to be answered. And the other aspect is one can do like different ways of learning. So, for example, there is role playing. So in workshops, for example, in physical workshops that we go to, there can be role playing, saying that, oh, okay, one participant plays the role of a demanding customer, and another tries to motivate the whole conversation so as to convince the customer, and so on. So we do these kind of role playing activities, and with ChatGPT you can do this role play. So now you have like the avenues of learning, ingesting material, and learning actually increase. So there's it's like a much richer kind of learning that can take place. And I think we should kind of say is that not everybody is suited to this style of learning. Okay, so there might be some people who are more in the the traditional way of learning, like Stephen was talking about, and some who are more they are more motivated to ask questions and get those answered. So I think ChatGPT can handle both types. It is not like it is only one style, but as long as there is the learning department or the bosses or the subject matter experts, they have an involvement in this whole process, then they can guide and they can handle possibly different types of learners here. So those are some of the things where ChatGPT can help.
Wonderful, wonderful. So moving to the next, World Economic Forum predicts that by year 2025, 50% of all employees will require reskilling or upskilling. These staggering numbers highlight the urgency for all of us, to upskill or reskill in some or the other way, right? So I would like to ask Prashant and Stephen, what do you think how generative AI can help us to upskill employees and foster a growth of continuous learning?
Yeah, that's great. It's a really good question. So, I think the first thing that people have to understand is what we're most used to when we think of generative AI is typically ChatGPT, and usually the chat function that most people have engaged with somehow, whether successfully or where they're like, I don't understand this, right? And so, but it's so much more. I consider that to be really the cherry on the banana split, right? There's the whipped cream, the bananas, the different kinds of ice cream, and that's how you can build it and integrate it into your system. So I say that because I want to tell a short story and have you kind of follow along with me on how what kind of potential it truly has, right? So just imagine Sam, she's a new hire at your organization, and probably like many of us, Sam's excited about the new role, right? We're excited about that new job, but also maybe a little bit of anxious about everything that she's going to have to learn because she's coming to a new company and maybe she's so used to where she was before. With generative AI, Sam's onboarding process is not just a series of, generic videos and content, just like Prashant was talking about earlier, but instead we create a dynamic and interactive experience tailored to her role, tailored to her experience, and like we were speaking about, her preferred learning style. So as Sam interacts with the AI, it learns more about her knowledge gaps, and then it adjusts to the teaching approach. It provides Sam with additional resources for the areas she's struggling with, and then it moves faster through those areas that it's obviously found out she's a little bit more comfortable with. That's a great personalized learning path, and she's going to quickly become confident in her role and probably more confident in her skills, which is what we really want out of a training program. But really, you got to stop and say, okay, Sam's journey doesn't stop at onboarding. That's great. But as the organization introduces new processes, right? As you get new tools or products, AI can really provide that just-in-time training to Sam. That kind of ongoing training is what, and she no longer has to wait for scheduled training sessions. She really can just figure out how to upskill in development on her own and also do the training that she needs to on her own for her product. And then also AI can typically, refresh Sam's knowledge on various topics and make sure that she doesn't become obsolete, right? So what does this mean? Sam's skills are going to grow. Her career is going to grow. She's going to feel supported and motivated, and she's going to continue learning. And in this way, not only have we upskilled Sam, but we've also fostered this environment of continual learning, right? And so what does that mean from a personal, what does that mean from a business aspect? Personalized learning, generative AI identifies the unique skills gaps for each employee and can create those personalized learning paths to bridge those gaps. So in the case of Sam, generative AI didn't only just transform her individual experience, but also has implications for the broader organization. We know that when she becomes more confident in her role, through the personalized learning, that her productivity is going to increase. We want that. And that means the organization is going to see a return on Sam much more quickly than we would have seen otherwise. And moreover, Sam's going to be more confident. She's going to be more proficient. She's going to have higher quality work. And all that agility and adaptability that we're seeing are going to be really important in today's rapidly changing business environment. So I think that personalized, right? Just-in-time training, the on-demand, providing the necessary training when an employee needs it, not just these regular scheduled sessions or, hey, get the training done in 60 days and everybody just checks the box. My company alone, I'll tell you, the first day of training is orientation. The second day is half orientation. And then the rest of the days are, hey, for the rest of 3 weeks, go get that training done. It's just like you were saying earlier, Prashant, about college education. You probably don't remember everything that you learned, and it picks up here and there. I probably don't remember a whole lot from that, but do pick up things, right? So just-in-time training for Sam equipped her with those relevant skills, allowed her to respond effectively to the evolving job requirements, and make sure that she's working at an optimal efficiency. The continual learning fostered by AI doesn't just impact Sam, but it spreads the organization, right? As more employees engage in continuous learning, collective knowledge grows, capabilities of the organization grows, and then that's going to lead to improved performance, innovation, and competitiveness. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, all three of those things are going to be great for you. And then ultimately, I think it just creates career growth. You're going to continually upskill. You're going to see people who are more confident. You can even have AI help them specifically in talent development. That's one of my favorite areas to see it because it can become so personalized. And then ultimately over time, this approach to learning shifts the organization's culture from, what we see now to a continuous learning being an integral part of the experience, and that's going to benefit everybody, right? So really excited for the potential. I had to start with saying, hey, you have to understand it's more than just the chat function, because the way that we can integrate it, and it's going to be based on your SaaS platforms off the shelf, or whether you can integrate it with your technical teams, has the potential to completely change onboarding and learning in organizations.
Wow, this is really wonderful, Stephen. So continuing with the same, see, we are seeing that generative AI analyzes large amount of data, and it's like right from your organization, employees' profile, their learning preferences, a lot of data is analyzed. So with this, we need to be very careful about how do we, integrate these things into onboarding, right? Definitely. So what do you think? What are the key considerations to keep in mind while integrating generative AI into onboarding?
Is this one me? Sorry, I don't want to, I know I just talked a lot, so if it's me, you guys can shake your head yes and I'll go, but I just spoke, so I didn't want to jump in if not.
Anybody would like to take it or add some points here?
No, I can take it. So I think, the key considerations to take into, onboarding are, generative AI is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's going to significantly depend on an organization's size, like we were talking about just now, their technical capability, their resources, their culture. But I think there's some things that you can generally take to understand, how you can integrate that into onboarding. So one, I think it's important to make sure that it's aligned with business objectives, right? So AI should support the company's overall business goals and objectives, whether it's improving productivity, reducing turnover, or enhancing employee satisfaction or engagement. We need to make sure that we kind of cascade those goals down into the orientation process. I think number two, it's vital to have the mechanisms to measure the effectiveness of the generative AI and you're achieving those desired outcomes. So in everything, you want to make sure that you're not only just doing something, but testing it for feedback and getting better and iterating. So that's important here. I think depending on the organization that you're in, you have to consider whether you can build your own generative AI system, kind of onboarding bots and things like that, offering you really complete control and integration how you want. But also, it's going to take a lot of resources. It's going to take a lot of expertise. You're going to have to be able to do that. So there are off-the-shelf solutions that can be faster and more cost effective, but probably less customized. The risk to that too is you want to make sure, and I think this is one of the biggest concerns people have about generative AI is the maybe distrust there, or the risk of losing institutional proprietary knowledge in your company. And I think that's why you see a lot of companies saying, look, it's brand new and we don't understand it. So we're just going to say no and see how this plays out for a little bit, right? And so I think that's important because there are a lot of, companies have trade secrets and employees are the biggest risk. That's why human resources professionals, I think, will always have a job because there's the human element. And so, humans are the biggest risks there. And I think, so how do you make sure you evaluate what your, security protocols are? How do you make sure that, the sensitive nature of, HR data is protected? And so I think it's just, that's probably the biggest concern that people need to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracy,
there's a lot of companies blocking it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, go. I was going to say there's a lot of companies blocking ChatGPT, including ours, at least with the email address. Just like Stephen made a really great point, it's a lot of wait and see because you can literally drop every secret of your company in there, and then who knows where it goes. So we didn't talk a lot about privacy and ethics, but that's a huge consideration when using this. So it's best to work with a company that is helping you figure that out.
Yeah. I would piggyback on what Tracy said. Our company blocked it too. So what's the ultimate solution to that is you can build a ChatGPT bot specific to your company, which will make sure any inputs into it are protected and not shared externally, right? But then also it has all the ability within your data warehouse to understand your policies, your processes, your systems, everything, so it can become a better use of the technology. Because right now what people are using is just a simple public version. If you can integrate it, you can create data security, but you can also create a more customized element for your organization.
And that's the secret when you're talking about integrating it with the company. And a lot of HR tech companies, many are integrated because with the open API now, ChatGPT can be attached to just about anything. And so you already may have that capability and you may not be aware of that. But it's a great tool, even with an individual, signing up with an individual account. It can teach you anything, really.
Yes, great. Tracy, continuing to the same, can you please add for the learning strategies as well? What key consideration we should consider?
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Prashant.
Go ahead, Tracy, you first.
So I think a lot of what Stephen said really translates into learning as well. And I think going back to understanding the technology and the data privacy and the ethics, I think when you talk about key considerations in onboarding and learning, I think onboarding, that translates really well into learning too. We also have to understand that this is a change. And so when you're dropping in AI into a company, particularly if you're asking your team to learn about it, it's a big change. So I have my whole team learning ChatGPT because I think it's pretty easy to use. It's very, very user-friendly. And people have been there for 40 years, people have been there for, a year using it. And because I think it's a skill. And I think that we have to remember that this isn't just something that we saw and, oh, this is a cool new thing. This is here to stay and it's already revolutionizing work. So we have to approach it with caution. We have to approach it with care, but we do have to approach it, whether it's onboarding or learning, we do have to understand its capabilities.
Yeah, totally agree with those thoughts. So, the privacy is very important because it is your company's materials, whether it be like policies that are related to HR and work practices and all that, or it could be business knowledge that you have, knowledge about what are the processes that you follow, who are your customers and how you approach them, and all of those kind of things are like very, very private to your company. So it is important that the tool that you have has only local access, and you don't let any data leak out from there. So that is definitely one aspect. The other aspect is, and kind of like Tracy was indicating, so the senior people as well as junior people in terms of like career progression, they both can use it, but probably some people will need hand-holding, so they will not be familiar with the mode of operation, or they will not be familiar with what they are going to exactly get out of it. And so some guidance is necessary with regards to, like how things should be used, how things should not be used. And, not everything should be like left up to the individual learners. There should be some kind of like interaction, which is a personal interaction, where the set of instructors or experts have a tab on what is going on, and that they can like see whether these things are getting done right. I mean, very simply, it could just be a distraction thing. It could be like, oh, somebody started off wanting to learn one thing, and then they spent hours and hours in learning something else, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, typically learning is a good thing, but you don't want people to also get distracted like they do with social media, right? So that's important. So some kind of like an auditing process, or some kind of like awareness of where exactly the tool is taking you, and some oversight on that is very important.
Yes, Prashant, I agree with all of you, and it's really wonderful points, and that should be considered. With this, let's ask our audience as well. Like, let's have a poll. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge in implementing generative AI in onboarding and learning? Is it data privacy and security concerns, integration with existing systems and processes, employee resistance to change, or cost and resource allocation? And the 5 seconds. These are some very, very important questions, guys, and I'm sure you might be liking, and the discussion is going really very well. I'm very thankful to Tracy, Stephen, Prashant for your time. And by the way, this webinar, Power Over, is recorded. So you will be getting the link after the webinar through your emails. You can even watch the first episode of ours, Generative AI in Recruitment. Okay, ending the poll now. Oh, wow. Data privacy and security concerns, 62%. Integration with existing systems and processes, 19%. Employee resistance to change and cost resource allocation are the 5 and 14%. Great.
I think that shows that we have some people who have their heads in the right spot, because that's probably the most common and most appropriate response, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those of us like me who are old enough to remember the beginnings of email, I mean, people were very, very concerned, like, what am I sending out there? Where is it going? Same thing with the advent of the internet. And I think this is, I did a course, and it compared it not to the advent of the internet, but generative AI to the advent of photography, which I thought was really interesting. So you're really seeing something that you hadn't before. And so I think the fears and concerns are really really justified because we just don't know.
Yes. So actually with generative AI, there are a lot of doubts, but what I feel is actually Ginny is out of the bottle. Instead of putting it back, or instead of trying to put it back and resisting it, let's lean forward and have a safe and productive, game out of it. So with this, let me ask you the next question. What do you think how we can have ethical and responsible use of generative AI when it comes to onboarding and learning? And I think Tracy, please let's hear from you first.
I'll jump in. I think it's so new that we're not really dealing with. I think we'll see this soon, but we're not really dealing with someone coming out and saying, "Here are the guidance. Here are the rules. Here are the." Stephen talked about writing an email to his team and not disclosing that it's ChatGPT. Which, why would you? That would be weird. By the way, this email was written by ChatGPT, but people are writing articles, people are writing books, people are writing. I took a post, I trained ChatGPT to write like me, and I asked it to write a LinkedIn post, and I did disclose in a LinkedIn post that this was written by ChatGPT, but a lot of people don't, and that's probably fine. Maybe. Is it fine to write a book and not disclose? I don't know. Where are those ethical lines? And we're still kind of figuring that out. So I think in the absence of that, when you're bringing a new technology like this into your company, you really have to have some kind of committee or privacy officer or somebody who can be the gatekeeper of, helping set these rules, helping set these norms and standards. Otherwise, it can go really, really, really badly. If you think of, giving your entire workforce access to admin privileges to your, HCM system, your payroll system, your HR system, if you give everyone just carte blanche to use whatever generative AI tool that comes into the company in some sort of way, that could be chaos. It could be devastating. Your IP could go out the door. So there has to be some set of rules and standards.
Correct. There has to be some set of rules and standard. Absolutely. Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. I love how you're talking about people writing books and things with them, because I think one of the things that it's absolutely the best at is content generation. And, so if you think about
absolutely
people who are content marketers out there, I'm sure they're using it endlessly right now to triple, quadruple their revenue streams. But it's fantastic when it comes to content generation. And that's why schools are worried about things like the word, I can't think off the top of my head, but copying other people's work, and so I think that's rightful. So I was at a networking event where there was an 18-year-old going to the same college I went to. He was a freshman going in, and I go, "So in high school, how many of you guys were using ChatGPT?" And his parents were there, and he slyly kind of looked away, right? So I think there's a lot of things we have to think about when it comes to making sure that there's clear and ethical guidelines, right? And with organizations, it's the same thing. You need to establish those clear ethical guidelines, but I think it's really about being transparent about use as well. And that's where we've seen some of the challenges, where you've heard of organizations who are using it in evaluating resumes for positions. And, you have to make sure that you're auditing for things that are like, unbiased data sets, testing the AI for fairness. For example, hiring a bunch of software engineers, but they're mostly all males. And then all of a sudden the data set becomes skewed towards males, right? And what does that do for gender equality and equity? Absolutely nothing. So you have to be able to identify those issues there. But then, that's why also some state governments in the US are starting to implement things like you have to put a disclaimer if you're utilizing AI within the screening or the recruiting process, right? So people are aware of that. And I think that's really what it's all about, is making sure that you're transparent about it, that it's being used ethically, making sure that you're fostering inclusivity through it, because it's a great system to be able to help you with that. We talked about the diverse learning styles earlier. And then, I think one thing to think about is, can people opt out? People are going to be scared of technology, and that's okay. I know people that still don't have Facebook. And so, people need to be able to opt out if they want. And that's also about that inclusive environment. But, I think there's going to be a lot of regulatory measures that we see nationally and internationally. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But I would agree, as the comparison to photography was a very unique one I haven't heard yet. And I think it's very spot on.
Awesome, awesome, Stephen. Very nice points. Thank you so much. Prashant, we would like to hear from you as well.
I don't have much to add to what Tracy and Stephen said. So definitely, the points that Stephen raised about, like, whether there is any bias going on, that needs to be looked at, and that bias could be in the learning process also. So it could be that, some things are only like highlighted and other things are not highlighted, or the personalization that we are aiming for is not actually getting achieved. So those are the things to kind of like watch out for, and like I said, there has to be some kind of like a review process, which where people are reviewing things. What are the inputs to the generative AI? What are the outputs from the generative AI? And whether they are like, aligned to the corporate objectives, but also in an ethical and moral sense, whether they are the right things that are going on. And the other thing that we have to worry about is the access, I would say, which is that not everybody is going to be comfortable with this technology, and we have to build that kind of like, level. So there will be some people who will be very reluctant, and there will be other people who will be like totally, using this technology and the front runners in this. And I think in both sides, we need to kind of like have a balance, encourage the laggards, but at the same time, like put some kind of like, cautionary things on the overeager people.
Yeah, some very great points. And guys, we have some surprise element in the last. So stay tuned. And let's move. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so let's talk something about Harbinger. So we have some very good discussions right now, and we would like to tell you something about our company, Harbinger Group. Harbinger is a global technology company that builds products and solutions that transform the way people work and learn. For 30 years, we have been innovating alongside organizations that are in the people business, serving the human resources, e-learning, digital publishing, education, high tech. And we are very proud to say that 40% women of Harbinger are in executive team, 400 plus customers we have, 43% women in workforce, 500 plus products we have developed, and we are a good strength of 850 Harbingers. So this was something about Harbinger. And one more thing I would like to ask you guys is this is a series going on for generative AI in HR tech. This was the second episode. We will soon come up with the third episode. If you have any topic suggestion, please put in the chat, or you can mail us as well. Now this comes to the end, but this starts with the question of the audience. So let's have some questions. So I have one question, and this is, as an HR leader, what steps should be taken to conduct due diligence and ensure that the current tools and systems in place effectively optimize onboarding and learning processes, improve decision-making, and enhance diversity and inclusion efforts? Okay. So this is open. I mean, please volunteer for this question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer so much as, in the absence of guidelines and rules, like this is so new in using in the workforce. I think whatever process you follow for due diligence, and we should have a process for due diligence for, say, bringing in a new piece of technology, I think that you can safely assume that you can carry that through. I think if we had this webinar in another 6 months, another 4 months, maybe, I think we'd be closer to being able to give an answer to that.
Yes. Okay, so moving to the next
What
question.
I would say,
Yeah.
I would second what Tracy is saying. I think it's going to be an evolving process. And so whenever there is an evolving process, like some, periodic reviews are the best way of doing things.
Absolutely. So this question, actually, I think this next question which I'm going to ask is related to what Tracy just mentioned about, and she posted also about this in the LinkedIn. So what measures are taken to ensure that the generative AI generated content aligns with the organization's learning objectives and company culture? How do you make sure that it is aligned? How do you train something like that?
Well, I mean, you can train it to think like your organization, but I think you need to take a step back and set, again, like we talked about, again, the rules and the norms and how you're going to use it. But you can train ChatGPT about your organization. If somebody in your organization writes blog posts, you can train it to do that. You can train it. We didn't talk about prompting really, but using generative AI, it's all about prompting. So the questions you ask, the information you feed it, and you can train it to become almost a quasi member of your organization. You may or may not want to do that, but it's possible.
I love that. I love that answer, Tracy, because it's true. This might be a little dark mirror for those who know that show on Netflix. It's kind of like Twilight Zone from many years ago. And, I would take it one step further. Once you give generative AI and you build these tools into your system, if you truly give it, access to your complete data warehouse, it might be able to figure out your culture that you don't know that you have, right? It will be able to see the emails being sent between people. It's going to be able to see, the conversations taking place. It's going to see your training materials, right? And you may have an outward facing culture that you believe in, but there might be a culture that you don't know about. And so I know that's a little dark mirror to go so far and say, man, it could really know this stuff. But really, I think that that's what's so exciting about the technology is that there is so much potential, right? And it's just, what is your risk tolerance? And, how are you going to build it in an ethical manner that we talked about? So yeah, that goes a little further, but, I think Tracy hit on the main points though, of right. It's input training data and, how you're making sure that the parameters are correct. And I always tell people, especially those just starting to use ChatGPT, for example, it's just like bad data in, you get bad data out. If you give it bad prompts, you're going to get bad responses, right? And so it does take practice. It takes some intentionality. And so, I would say you have to be, very intentional about the data and the parameters that you're developing for that system when you get to that point. But much of that is probably, still pretty advanced, integration right now.
I think that's a great point. And it can not only expose your culture, it can change your culture in a really positive or a really negative way. And I think when we're talking about generative AI now, we're always talking about the either or, because we just don't know. There's so much incredible potential. And that's what I try to embrace and hold on to. And there's so much potential for things to go wrong if we don't line up the ethics, if we don't set some rules and standards.
Correct. Actually, we have a lot of questions, but we are running short of time, guys. So don't worry, we will answer all your questions over email. I'll just take last question here. So it is, can generative AI models help in predicting employee performance and identifying high potential employees during the onboarding phase? Wow, wonderful question.
I absolutely love this question. I was hoping that this would be the question that you would pick as the last one, because this is an example of something we've actually done in my own company. So we've actually used machine learning. I work in a clinical organization. We employ doctors and PCPs, primary care physicians. And so what I'll say is we've used machine learning to understand the engagement levels, to understand the risk of losing people due to attrition based on a lot of different questions, how they use technology, how they utilize their time. And because the physicians are so important to our practice, it's been a really good opportunity for us to be able to hone in and create a best place to work, similar to how you could do those same exact things in employee performance and even identifying high potential employees during onboarding phase, utilizing the generative AI tools to kind of assess their development and their growth through that orientation.
Yes, you can, what Steven said.
Okay, great. Anyone wants to add anything here? No? Okay, this brings me to the end of the wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, Tracy, Stephen, Prashant. It was really wonderful talking to all of you. Thank you, attendees, all the participants. The questions were really awesome. And I hope that you have really enjoyed, the discussion. As I mentioned, we'll be sharing the link, with all of you, the recorded link. If you have any questions, we will be answering them. And yeah, I'm getting more questions. I mean, this is very interesting, Definitely, we'll answer all the questions as ASAP. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day. Good night. Bye-bye.